Earlier this year, the president formed a team to reduce the size of the government to improve efficiencies. Since then, this team's been going around to most agencies, demanding information and causing massive cuts. Now, a judge is saying some of that activity was illegal. What's happening here? Let's get into it. The U.S. Institute of Peace, or USIP, isn't your typical agency. It was created by Congress under Ronald Reagan. It is an independent agency. It works with the legislative branch. It works with the executive branch. It's like a peace-building think tank. It resolves international conflicts. But in February, President Trump and DOGE tried to dismantle it with what a federal judge is calling brute force. This is because President Trump signed an executive order to eliminate, to the maximum extent, the functions and staff of USIP and several other agencies. USIP did not want DOGE to come into their building. They said, we own our building and our money comes from Congress. Do not come in here. DOGE went in anyway, so that led the leader of USIP to say, DOGE has broken into our building. Then we saw law enforcement officers, which was a mix between federal and private security, come and physically remove the acting president of USIP out of the building. They then transferred the building under GSA and they emplaced their own guy, which was Kenneth Jackson. Later, that was ruled to be illegal. But here's where it gets even crazier. Federal prosecutors threatened USIP officials with criminal prosecution. They also threatened the private security guards, saying, your company will no longer get any government contracts if you do not do what we say. Employees were, in the words of a judge, probably terrorized. And who's the judge calling this out? U.S. District Judge Beryl Howell, an appointee of former President Obama. The judge dropped a 102-page ruling on this whole operation, and she called it a gross usurpation of power and a way of conducting government that unnecessarily traumatizes USIP employees who deserved better. The USIP is unique. It's not a traditional executive agency. So when DOGE came through the doors, when the Trump administration put immense amount of pressure on this agency and evicted the leader of the agency, the judge is saying all of that's unlawful. She declared all actions null and void because they were carried out by illegitimately installed leaders. The judge even grilled the Justice Department's attorneys, asking the question, why use guns and threats by DOGE against American citizens? Just because DOGE is in a rush? That's a federal judge calling out what appears to be an intimidation campaign. And what better way to describe it? If you look at the federal workforce, with the union protections being stripped, with their benefits under attack, with the probationary purge, with the looming layoffs, with the disparaging words in the media, how else can you describe it but an intimidation campaign where many workers are losing hope? There are agencies right now sending letters to workers that were fired, asking them to come back. Would you please come back? And these workers want nothing to do with the agency. They rather go into the private sector at this point. And maybe that was the goal this entire time. Now, USIP is a pretty tiny organization, so why does any of this matter? So what do they do over there? This is some of the stuff they do. They train mediators, they research peace-building strategies, and they support global stability. But President Trump and DOGE, they see things a little bit differently. Their number one objective, it appears, is to cut hundreds of thousands of federal workers and to cut billions of dollars in contracts, even if that means targeting small independent agencies like USAID or USIP. So the judge pointed out that Trump second-guessed the judgment of Congress and President Reagan when he created it over 40 years ago. Now, of course, things change. Over the course of 4 decades, things naturally change. Maybe the State Department is doing some of the functions that USIP does. Maybe there are duplicate efforts. I don't know. But you should research it. You should study it. And this is one of the biggest complaints I've been hearing is that when DOGE officials go in, there's such an appetite to cut. You don't even know what you're cutting. It's this mentality of, we'll break it, and if we break it too bad, then I hope we can fix it on the back end. Maybe, hopefully. And this really isn't just about USIP. DOGE have been trying to get into buildings and trying to get into agencies they really have no business being in. Like, look at the GAO, the Government Accountability Office. The GAO is a congressional watchdog that has existed for over 100 years. They conduct investigations, they look for fraud, waste, and abuse. Similar to what DOGE is doing, supposedly, at least on the surface. I have interacted with dozens of GAO reports. They're dozens of pages long, they're very comprehensive in how they read out, and they provide recommendations to the agency leaders on how they can eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse. So a week ago, the GAO rejected DOGE's request to assign a team to review their operations. Why? It's because GAO is a legislative agency, and they're not subjected to executive orders. A GAO spokesperson said they declined any request to have a DOGE team assigned. Meanwhile, GAO has 39 open investigations on whether or not the White House violated the law by freezing funds Congress already allocated. The late Gary Connolly called this attempt a direct assault on our nation's sacred separation of powers. And it doesn't stop there, because why should it? DOGE also tried to embed teams into the organization that runs NPR and PBS. DOGE said they were targeting every institute or agency that has congressional monies appropriated to it. To put it in another perspective, let's say you run a nonprofit, you receive 10% government funding. Because you get government funding, now DOGE can go ahead and embed a team within your organization. DOGE is testing the limits of executive power, and agencies like the GAO are pushing back. Also, when DOGE is going through these agencies, they come with like a 3 or 4 person team, and they're kind of linked up, they're partnered up with federal employees that have been there for decades, and then they disclose the information. DOGE reviews it all, and then they make recommendations, or they advise. But we all know what's happening here with their advising. Basically, if they advise you to fire 10,000 people, usually, if you're a leader in that agency, you haven't been there that long, you're like, okay, because you know DOGE represents the interests of the president. You want to do right by the president. That's called job security. That's called you staying in the position of power longer because you're doing what you're told. In addition to all of this, we have union protections being stripped away from over 500,000 federal workers. And this is being done because the unions are being seen as a threat. You can't have them there. They're going to do the opposite of what this administration wants to be done. These battles are being fought in court still, but if you want to update to that, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.